And we are live. Welcome to another episode of the Not Another Yoga Class podcast and LinkedIn Live series. Today, I have an amazing guest. I have Angela Wilkins-Green, who is a mindset coach and, importantly, a menopause consultant. Hello, Angela.
Hello, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the menopause. This isn't necessarily something that I know enough about to be able to run this show by myself. So I brought you in because you are a specialist in this area. Menopause is something that I don't think anyone believes across the country, at least, is taken seriously enough in companies. And that can lead to a lot of issues that we're going to discuss today. So talk to me about menopause. Why do you think it's not necessarily being taken seriously?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, first of all. Definitely not being taken seriously enough, but there is progress. So I don't want to be all doom and gloom about it. There is progress and people are starting to sit up and listen. And that is a huge relief to people like me. And I think there is this... I think it's the stigma of the past that's the problem, and that women have not talked about it. And so people haven't been able to understand it. And we've never been taught about it. So when we were at school, there was no mention of menopause. All you ever got taught about were your periods and pregnancy. And then it stopped. And there's nothing after that. So as far as we're concerned, as we're going through life, that's it. Unless you happen to find out from your mum or your auntie or something else. There's nothing out there. You go. There's nothing out there to educate us. And so why would we be? So there is no blame here. This is all about now education. And what we can do as a society, now we are starting to talk about it. And so, yes, it is a problem in organisations because at the moment we're just still at the very early stages of trying to bring this into the mindset of everybody. And we have to, because this is happening to every single woman in the world, whether we want it to happen or not, it's going to happen. It affects us all. So it affects all women. And it affects all men in some way, shape, or form. And so it is vitally important that organisations are starting to listen, are starting to take notice, and are starting to understand it in a way that they then can be supportive, rather than what I would describe as the eye roll. So, and you see it a lot, you say the word menopause and quite often you are greeted with an eye roll. Oh, it's that conversation. And that's not good enough. It's not good enough, because what we need is that support, and we need people to understand what is going on and what we can do to help ourselves and others. It's about empowering women.
Yeah. Would you say that menopause is almost like mental health 20 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, Davina, what was it, three years ago, something like that, when she came out on Channel 4 with her program, that's been the catalyst for change.
Oh, really?
But it's that, in my mind, in my belief, that's been the catalyst. But it's so slow. It's so slow. And it's going to be that we are having to change societal beliefs here in terms of what's going on to women, And I talk quite a lot about the difference between, how we see things in the West and actually, and we've done this to ourselves. We don't talk about it. We hide it. It can be embarrassing. There's lots about menopause that people, they don't embrace it because it makes you feel shit. It really can do. It affects you mentally, it affects you physically. And so we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to be seen as women who are struggling, who are not as good as they used to be in their role. Whereas if you think about China, if you think about Japan, aging is embraced there. It's embraced. And, you know, elders are seen as somebody to look up to and are hugely respected. And it's, you know, in Chinese medicine, traditional medicine, it's seen as the second spring. So I love referring to that, because actually that is what the world needs to think about, because actually this is women who are embracing a new stage of life, and it's really empowering when you get it, when you understand it, when you talk about it freely. So important.
Let's talk about some of the, as someone who is unlikely to experience the symptoms of menopause, let's talk about how those symptoms can affect you at work.
Yeah, so there's physical and mental symptoms, and there's loads of them. So, you know, we're talking 30 plus different symptoms. We have estrogen receptors all over our bodies. And so it's not just the hot flushes that you might see in somebody, or the night sweats that they get that are keeping them awake at night. It's far more than that. So our whole bodies might be affected. And there are things that are going to affect you in your mind too. So quite often we're feeling loss of confidence. We might be feeling heightened anxiety. And all of those things can lead to stress, because instead of just coming to work and focusing on what you're supposed to be doing in your role and enjoying your role and doing your best and performing at your best, you've got all these underlying things that you're thinking about that are going on in your body. You know, you've got symptoms like itchy skin. You know, I personally suffer with really itchy scalp, and it can be really embarrassing. You know, some women get hormonal acne. You know, I suffer really badly with that. So there's lots of things that are going on that women are dealing with that are causing them stress, that are then causing them to not perform at their peak. And when you are not supported and you're feeling alone in that, and you don't feel like you can talk to anybody about those symptoms, that will just escalate into not being able to perform. Quite often that escalates into people going off sick. That can escalate into people leaving their roles. And 1 in 10, it's reported 1 in 10 women will leave their role due to their menopause symptoms.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a big statistic.
Yeah. And even higher women that consider it. So, and lots of people will say they don't believe that statistic. There's lots of people out there that don't believe. I don't know whether I believe it or not, but what I do know is I was one of those women, you know.
Yeah.
So I left a 25-year career in fashion retail because of the psychological symptoms that came with my menopause transition. And that's because I was uneducated. So I'd never heard of the word perimenopause. I thought menopause happened when you were in your 50s. You might have some hot flushes and your periods would stop. And that is the extent of my knowledge before it happened to me. I was 42 when mine started. So in complete denial, a year later, when my mum said, maybe it could be this, don't be ridiculous, was my response, you know. And so that sort of transition into it and that lack of education led me to completely crash 2 years later, because I hadn't gone to the doctors, I hadn't sought any support. I just kept going, thinking it was something else. But by the time that 2 years hit, my anxiety was just through the roof. And I'd started a new job, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't believe in myself anymore. I don't know how to do this. Of course, I know how to do it. I've been doing it for 25 years, but in my mind, I had lost it all. And that takes a long time to come back from that.
I can imagine. This has completely blown me away. So essentially what we have is a very, very, very large group of people who are unknowingly experiencing something which is causing a drop in performance, almost reflecting it back onto themselves because they don't understand what's going on, who probably have managers who are questioning whether their performance is up to scratch. And in reality, if we really understood this and menopause was a thing that we understood more in organizations, we could almost point it out and go, is it this?
Absolutely.
Because we've also, these people that I'm talking about, they're experienced employees. This is some of
Absolutely.
the best in an organization, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is a big issue.
It is absolutely massive. You know, there was absolutely no reason for me to leave my career of 25 years. You know, I was working at the top of my game, but I suddenly did not believe it, you know, and that was devastating, absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
And what I think a lot of people don't understand is when this might happen. So menopause, the natural menopause transition. So there's other ways you can go into menopause. It might be surgical. But if you are going through a natural menopause transition, that could start anytime from your late 30s. So you might still be considering having more children. You might still have young babies, young children at home, but you could be starting having symptoms and you'd be completely unaware of it. And this hasn't changed over time. Women have always maybe started their perimenopause in their early 40s, late 30s, early 40s. But society has changed. We're having our families later. We're putting more focus on having our careers. And so now we're dealing with much more than maybe our older generations were, because they may not have been in the same situation. Their children may have grown up by the time they reached their perimenopause. But for us, that's for many of us not the case. So we're dealing with much more and trying to hold down a career, trying to grow our families, still maybe even wanting to start a family. And this might be happening. And the stress that could cause is immense. Yeah. So, but I do just also want to say 25%, because I don't want it all to be doom and gloom, because it isn't. This is an amazing stage of life when you're educated and you know how you can help yourself. And 25% of women do not experience symptoms. So every woman will go through menopause, but 25% of women won't experience symptoms. So that's why some people just look like they're sailing through life and other women look like they're on the floor. You know, no women's experience will be the same as anybody else's. So there is no broad brush here. Everybody's experience is different.
That is important to know, I think. So what can an organization do if there's a leader listening to this and going, okay, well, how do I create a menopause friendly workspace that encourages women who possibly are going through these symptoms, who maybe don't even know they're going through these symptoms, get that kind of support they need?
I think the first thing I will say is it's all about the culture. You've got to have the culture in place. You've got to have a leadership and management team who are able to listen and who are able to respond. And in order to have that, you need to have the education. So I think the education piece comes first. I think you have to educate your leaders and your managers, but also all of your employees. And I think all organizations have a responsibility to do that, because all organizations have a responsibility to look after the well-being of their employees. And this is huge. So the first thing to do is look at who you've got within your organization. You know, what is the mix of your organization, and really understanding that. So I think the education piece comes first, and then there are things that you can do within. So it's making sure that women are given the right environment to work in, which isn't always easy. I know, when you're thinking about temperature controls and, you know, safe spaces for women to go and take some time out maybe, but they're really important things to consider. So the actual environment that people are working in is really important. Even things like thinking about your toilet facilities, which everybody thinks, yeah, we've got the toilet facilities. Yeah, but are they kept clean? Are they kept clutter-free? Because quite often toilets can be used as a storage cupboard and they're full and there's stuff everywhere. Are they well stocked with sanitary products? Because women might need them urgently, quickly, unexpectedly. Are the sanitary bins being cleaned, you know, often enough? Are they being changed often enough so that they're not full? And because you see it all the time. So there's loads of small things that you can be doing, practical things that will help women. And then there's things like, if you really want to take it seriously and you really want to help your teams, introduce menopause cafes. Just once a month, once a quarter even, would be brilliant. It's an opportunity for women to come together, and men. I'm seeing loads of men really embracing this topic, which is absolutely fantastic. Coming together in a really safe space to talk about what's going on for them. You can introduce menopause champions. Absolutely brilliant to have within an organization, because they act as that safe person to go to. So if you have a real personal problem that you are struggling with, but you don't feel comfortable to go and speak to your own line manager or someone in HR, having that menopause champion is there as someone who is trained, who's going to understand your problem and offer you the support in whatever form that might be. And then, of course, there's menopause policies, so you can introduce a policy. I think they're really important to have, whether that's part of a broader well-being policy. I think that's fine, or whether it's a standalone menopause policy. I think as long as you've got one, but there's no point in having a policy if you're not going to do anything with it. So I'm all for having them, but don't let it be a piece of paper that sits in the bottom of the drawer and never gets looked at again, because that's just a waste of everybody's time, effort and money. It has to be something that you're going to do that you seriously want to support. And it's there for a reason. And in those policies, you can offer additional resources, websites and other places that women can go for extra help. So there's just a handful of things people can do.
Really practical things as well. Can we touch on very quickly, because we've run over, but this is an important.
We have, sorry.
It's all right, it's fine. Can we touch on what you do as a menopause consultant, please?
Yes, absolutely. So very quickly, I do offer workshops, so like lunch and learns. I offer workplace reasonable adjustments and policy guidance. And the thing that I do, what I think is really different, that's not out there, is I offer one-to-one menopause consultations, and I offer my coaching program, which is specifically for women at this, going through this transition. And offering that one-to-one support to women shows that you are absolutely taking their well-being seriously, and you want that tailored support to get them through. So they're brilliant. I focus on.
Thank you so much, Angela. This has been fantastic. I've loved this episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.